In 2010, I got a part-time job at McDonald's to help pay off my college tuition. I attended a community college, so the cost wasn't that expensive, so a part-time job was perfect. McDonald's didn't pay well, but it was 2010, so everything wasn't as expensive as things are today. My manager scheduled me to work nights as I had my classes during the day, giving me time to balance my school schedule. It wasn't a hard job, but it wasn't an easy one either. My job was pretty self-explanatory. Take orders, bring out the food, clean the store, handle money, etc. The night shifts have the least amount of staff, so a lot of times you'd only have about 3 people working that night, including me. One night, the staff member who would originally work with me had called out sick and wouldn't be able to make it. That meant there would only be 2 people on duty throughout the night. It was just me and my other coworker who I definitely did not connect with. Not that he was a bad person, just someone who wasn't a chatterbox like I was. It was around 1 a.m. and business was slowly starting to die down to the point where we didn't get any customers. It was a quiet night, and because there were no customers, we didn't have much to do. My coworker starts mopping the floors while I sit in one of the booths playing a game on my phone to pass time. There were only 3 hours left of my shift, so I knew it wouldn't be long. As I'm on my phone, my coworker, in this very monotone voice, tells me to get back to the register as we had people coming. I look out the window and see a car pull into the parking lot and 2 people get out. I let out a deep sigh and walk over to my post, getting ready to hopefully take these last-minute orders. But as they got closer to the door, I made them out to be these sketchy men in long trench coats. They looked homeless based on their appearance. Growing up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, it wasn't uncommon to see people like this, so I thought nothing of it. They all come in and head towards the register when one of the men speaks up and asks for a single black McCoffee. It was a weird request, seeing as it was 3 a.m. on a Thursday, and 2 of them, which made me wonder why only one of them ordered. He hands me a crumpled up $5 bill and tells me to keep the change, and they go sit down. Needless to say, I make his coffee just how he wanted it and bring it to them sitting at a booth. The man who had ordered nodded his head at me as a way to, I assume, say thank you. As I was about to leave to go back to my post, the other man speaks up and says, "So, I guess business has been slow, eh?" I awkwardly chuckle and tell him that it was, and that it was normal at this time of night. He then proceeds to ask what my name was and that it was really pretty. I say, "Thank you very much, and it's Natalie." Not trying to be rude, I told them that I'll be at the register and to let me know if they needed anything. At this point, I was a little creeped out, but I didn't feel threatened or afraid. I watch as one of the men basically chug the entire coffee in less than 5 seconds and start talking to each other very quietly. Though I wasn't sure what they were saying to one another, as, let's face it, it's not my business or concern. I'm sitting at my post for a good 20 minutes when I see one of them come up to me. I say hi once again, and he then asks me, "So, Natalie, what time are you out of here?" 7, I said. He smiles and tells me to have a good night. After that, they leave the restaurant, and I see them get into their ratchet car and drive off. Now, I obviously lied about the time I got off, but I was just relieved as they did not seem like people with good intentions. The next 2 hours flew by with only one other person coming in for some fries. The sight of the morning shift crew coming in was art to my eyes as I clocked out and walked right outside to my car. I barely just made it home as I was beyond tired and overall just out of it. I'd say I slept for a few decent hours when I awoke to the sound of my phone going off. Figuring it was my alarm going off, I take a look at my phone and see that it wasn't an alarm, but rather a call from my manager. I answer it, and in a confused voice, he asks, "Good morning, Natalie. Sorry for the early call. Are you at work right now?" No, I left right when the morning shift came in. Oh, that's weird, because 2 men came in just before 7 looking for you. They said they were here to pick you up. I quit that job the day after. It was about 2 a.m. and I was on the way to my job at my local McDonald's to open with one of my favorite managers. She told me to text her when I got there so she could let me inside. Sometimes we'd have to be there really early in the morning if someone from the previous shift had to leave early. However, those were rare occasions. Once I pulled in, I noticed a man standing outside of the McDonald's near the front door, his hands in his pockets while smoking a cigarette. He was shooting me this sort of menacing stare as if he were waiting impatiently for us to open. Let me point out that it was pouring outside, so I was really confused why this guy wasn't just sitting in his car. I then parked and texted my manager that I was here. Thankfully, she had an umbrella with her and walked over to me so we could walk in together without getting wet. I say my usual good morning, and she then rushed me inside saying, "Did you see that guy out there?" I told her I did, and we began wondering why he was outside in the rain. We assumed that maybe he was just on something and that he was waiting for us to open so we could get breakfast. However, that wouldn't be for another 2 hours until 4 a.m., which is around the time most McDonald's open here in Canada. My manager proceeded to help me refill sauces, napkins, and things like that. She then tells me that she's gonna be in the back office if she needed me. I tried my best not to think about the man outside and tend to my shift so that we could get ready to open. Right then, my manager calls me in from her office and tells me to come look at the security cameras. I go into her office and we both watch as the man from outside starts talking on the phone with someone in Spanish. It's not common for someone to be speaking Spanish in Canada, but it happens. The cameras outside do pick up audio, however, it's not the best and you couldn't hear it well. Now, my stepmother is Puerto Rican, so while I understand a fair bit of Spanish, I don't speak it. What he's saying on the phone, though, is horrific. For one, he knew my manager and I would be the only ones working, and he was planning on, quote, snatching our asses up. He then proceeds to pull out what appeared to be a large screwdriver from his coat and turns to face the door. That's when we both hear knocking on the glass coming from the door. My manager tells me to go to the door, but to not open it while she called the police. I walk out into the lobby and there he was, slowly knocking on the glass door with his hand behind his back. I motioned to him that we were closed and to come back later. However, he didn't seem to get the hint and just stood there soaking wet. I try my best to ignore him, but the sound of him pounding and scraping his nails against the door was petrifying. All of a sudden, I then hear him loudly say something from outside. Like I said, I only understood some Spanish, so I couldn't really understand it exactly, but it sounded like he called me cerda, which for those who don't know means pig in Spanish. No matter how many times I tried to ignore him, he'd always be there watching me through the window. Police in this area of my city don't take things like this lightly, so they arrived within 10 minutes. Once law enforcement pulled into the McDonald's, the man tried to run to his car. He didn't get very far, as police were able to tase him before he could drive away. My manager and I watch as police cuff this dirty-looking man while putting him into the backseat of a cop car. With very poor English and an angered tone, he claims that he was just hungry and that he wanted food. Though the screwdriver and the tape they found in his car said otherwise. As my manager made her statement in a police report, I see the man giving me that same menacing stare. I'll be honest, I got goosebumps just seeing him like that, as most things don't freak me out. It was a look of anger and hatred, like as if he had known we knew what his plan was and how he was upset that he was unsuccessful at it. I stayed at that McDonald's for another year after that incident. Police had said they would update us on everything, but nothing ever became of it. Thank you to my manager for protecting me, and thank you to my stepmom for teaching me Spanish. I'm an 18-year-old female, and this happened back in 2009 when I was a freshman in college. I lived in a small city in the US, which was an overall safe area in my state. I even told my friends that even some of the criminals in my city were polite. Long story short, it was a neat little city that really deserved more attention. The people were nice, and sirens would almost never be heard. One night, a few of my college friends and I had just finished a concert from our school performed by a local band. They never made it big, but they were still well known around the area, especially if you were into music. Anyway, we leave the school trying to find somewhere to eat as we were practically starving. It was around 11 at night, meaning most places were closed, making it harder for us to find food. Eventually, we decided to go by a nearby McDonald's as we were dirt poor college students with little to no money. We enter the McDonald's and order our food and find a nearby table to eat at. For some context, there were 4 people. Me, my friend Emily, my friend James, and his girlfriend Samantha. As we're eating a total of 40+ McNuggets, I notice a man walk in hyperventilating as if he had just ran a marathon. He wore black sweatpants, a white shirt, and had on a backpack. Not that there was anything wrong with him, but something about him just made me feel uneasy. On top of that, he seemed disheveled with long messy hair and looked as if he hadn't been to the gym in years. Now, I'm not one to judge people, but there was something about this man that was just off. Not wanting to pry and too tired to care, I think nothing of it and just continued eating while talking to my friends. I nudge Emily and whisper in her ear if she thinks that man seemed off. She just so happens to agree with me and tells me that we should just not pay attention to him. We focus on eating our food while chatting with our friends when James turns around and made eye contact with the man. However, not even a minute after, he walks up to our table with a flashlight, smiling his smile. Hey there, weird favor. The toilet in the bathroom is overflowing. Can one of you help me with it? We all just kind of look at each other confused and say that we were eating and to ask an employee. He disregards our suggestion and insists we help him out. We politely decline and tell him no, to which he then asks once again. But before I was about to say something, James says in an annoyed tone to leave us the hell alone and to go away. His face went pale and he grabs a drink before leaving the restaurant. Samantha kept telling us as to how uncomfortable the man made her feel and that she's sworn she's seen him before. We began to ask her if she was sure, and if she did, where she saw him. She said that she couldn't remember but thought it was sometime last week. We eat for another 20 minutes before leaving to go back home when Emily says something I didn't realize. You know, he never went into the restroom in the first place. How would he know the toilet was overflowing? I look at her with this unsettling face, and that's when I immediately thought of the backpack. Upon realizing this, several questions came up in my mind about why he had a backpack. What were the contents of it? What were his intentions? And what would he have done had one of us gone in there? These questions bothered me for a good week when James saw a chilling news report. Apparently, the same tactic had happened at another restaurant, only this time it actually worked. The same man had tried the approach and managed to lure a woman standing by the men's restroom. He was able to pull her in and do things I won't mention until a few people helped break up the situation. The news showing the man's face on TV made James almost spit out his water as he saw this. James ends up calling the police to put in our tip and what had happened. Police in my city don't mess around, so whenever something bad happened, they were ready to stop it. Eventually, Samantha had remembered seeing the man at a pub she was at. He didn't do anything, but described him as being drunk and annoyed at the bartender. Needless to say, this news went around like wildfire around my city and even my school. What had once been this nice area with barely any crime, only to have something disturbing happen. For those of you wondering, yes, he was thrown in prison. I ended up staying away from that McDonald's for a good while until the paranoia faded. It wasn't until a year later where I learned a truth I didn't know. James and Samantha had moved away, and it was actually Emily who had told me this. During dinner one night with her, I had asked her if she had remembered about the man from McDonald's many years ago. Her eyes went wide, and she said she was going to tell me something she never told me. Turns out, the man had ended his life in prison not too long ago. He couldn't live with the pain anymore and just decided to end it. I was shocked when I learned this and really couldn't believe it. However, it was nice to know that he couldn't hurt any more people while knowing our city was much safer. Anyway, that's my story, and I hope you can all learn from this and help prevent it. If you see or feel something is off, you need to tell someone. There are truly some messed up people in this world.